It seems to me that it is injustice that drives Tommy Robinson, the injustice of the state not listening to all the warnings about the grooming gangs, etc. Do you agree it's injustice that drives Tommy Robinson?
Well, the injustice of... So when the police froze my assets, and again, if you understand how driven I am on issues and how successful I want to be, or I wanted to be, and every minute of every plan, I've got a plan. I always had a plan. I'm going to do this, I'm going to buy that house, I'm going to build this, I'm going to get this, and this is what... And then the police come in after 3 or 4 months and they froze every one of my assets. They took my businesses, they closed down my bank accounts, they froze everything for 4 years.
So for this simple, really technical case of mortgage fraud that no one lost a penny from, his assets were frozen for 4 years and all his businesses ruined. By any normal standards, simply signing the guarantee on a mortgage form and causing a technical fraud would not cause a person to lose their entire set of businesses, would not cause a long-term imprisonment, and would not cause imprisonment in a high-security prison where your life is constantly put in danger. But then, of course, all of those charges could have disappeared if he'd agreed with the state to become a mole, a spy inside the EDL. He turned that down. Now, let's move on and see what other convictions Tommy Robinson has.
Okay, I went to... England were not allowed to wear the poppy. England were playing on Remembrance Sunday.
Yes.
So I flew to Zurich, to FIFA's headquarters, and I climbed on their roof with a banner, and I was convicted for that. That's one of my convictions they talk about all the time.
Okay.
Another conviction was I went to London, again from Remembrance Sunday. During a 2-minute silence, there was gangs of Muslims who were burning poppies, shouting "burn, British soldiers burn." I asked the police why they're allowing them to do that, and they said it's free speech.
It should be noted here that complete double standards apply. It's free speech when the Muslims are burning the poppies. But it is not free speech when you do anything to upset Islam. So let's just take a look at what happened with free speech to Lawrence Southern. Having seen an article in the UK declaring the question was Jesus gay and that caused no offence, she decided to do a poster saying Allah is gay and display it in Luton. However, this freedom of speech was soon restricted because it caused offence.
In case it's offensive, I've had 3 or 4 people come up. Because people...
Yeah, I find it offensive. I find it very...
I'm offended that people think that Allah is not for gay people as well, that Allah is not for trans people as well.
That's not
Allah is a gay guy. He is
that's not what you're saying on there.
Allah is a gay
That's
guy.
not what you're saying on there, is it?
That is
Allah is a gay
deceiving.
guy.
To it,
I'm taking offence to what people are saying to me
It
here.
constitutes a public order offence, okay, and I cannot allow you to display these out here. Okay, people are coming up to us and telling us that it's offensive, and we're potentially going to have a situation on our hands, okay, where people are going to start becoming injured, okay.
People are going to get injured.
Because people are taking offence to what you're saying. And what you're displaying, people are telling me is offensive and they're taking offence to it, okay. Therefore, for your safety and for the safety of everybody else, okay, to prevent any public order offences from occurring or taking place, I need you to remove these from your desk, hand them over to me, and you cannot display them or dish them out. Committing a public order offence, okay. And I'm concerned that if you continue to display these, okay, not only your safety but the safety of other members of the public will be at risk, and I cannot allow you to display these.
So in this case, with Laura Southern expressing her freedom of speech, she causes offence, just like Tommy Robinson was offended. But in this case, of course, she's going to get arrested for it. Because now in the UK, we no longer have freedom of speech, in particular when it comes to the subject of Islam. The really important point here, of course, is that the police are protecting the people who could cause the violence and actually threatening to arrest the people who aren't causing the violence and who are acting within the law. Therefore, the police are protecting, in this case, the potential lawbreakers. So with this double standard injustice, let's see what happened with Tommy Robinson. It was the National Remembrance Day, Poppy Day.
British troops burn in hell! 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 British troops murder us!
I climbed over a fence, over a wall, come back inside the police barrier, and then I run and jumped over the fence into the Muslim group to prevent them burning the poppies. I was arrested. I was prosecuted.
In fact, what happened in this case was Tommy jumped and first grabbed the ISIS flag, and he was then charged with assaulting police officers. But it was only when the video was produced showing he did not assault the police officers that the charge was changed. Tommy was fined £350 for that, and the poppy burners and ISIS flag holders were fined £50.
That's one of my convictions. I illegally entered America.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in a confession box. I'm only joking.
You are. We're finding out who Tommy Robinson is.
So in 2010, I went to America. I had meetings lined up to meet some highly influential people, congressmen.
But by this time, had you left the EDL?
No, this was during my height of the EDL, 2010. What they tried to do here was make us an extreme fringe voice. Now, if I was successful in America with the people and the influential people I'd be meeting, that would have changed that.
So you went to America against the law because you weren't allowed to go to America?
Well, I was allowed to go. I've been there 3 times in 3 years. But then when I went to go in 2010, they held me at JFK Airport. And they told me quite clearly that the British had told them not to let me in. Right. And there's usually discrepancies. They can usually allow things, but they've got no allowment here. You're going back. Yeah. So they sent me back. So the next year, I took my friend's passport. And yes, I illegally entered America. Yeah. And I knew full well what I was doing was wrong.
Why did you do it? To meet influential people?
No, to give a warning to America. I feel that, do you know what? I wish someone would have come to this country, to my town, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and said, this is what's going to happen. And this is how it's going to happen.
So your actual reason for breaking the law in this case was to give a warning to America?
A warning to America that I knew.
Your deep convictions.
That I knew full well. Do you know what? I was scared because I thought if I get caught in America, I'm going to do time in America. And people say you've got a few minutes before you're sexually abused in an American prison. So I was scared, yeah. But I felt that again, I know it's a law and I shouldn't have broke it, but I felt that my warning to America. I gave a speech. I got in, yeah? And I gave a speech in New York, and I spoke after the New York State Centre. I didn't cause any trouble.
What name did you speak under?
So I used a passport under the name Andrew McMaster.
Yeah. When you gave the speech?
Tommy Robinson.
So you actually got inside America and then declared
to the Americans, yeah, they all knew. So I gave a speech as Tommy Robinson. I flew home the next day. I spent 2 days there. Do you know what? If I knew I was going to get 12 months in jail, I'd have spent 2 months there. I was gutted. But I come home to the UK. I was arrested 6 weeks later by British police. I was remanded instantly into prison, and I spent 22 weeks on solitary confinement for that crime. Yeah. And do you know, before I went, this is the thing that gets me. Before I went, I researched it all, and I looked into who had used fake identification. This is what the crime was. Abu Qatada come into this country on a fake passport. He didn't go to jail. A young girl had gone to fight for ISIS on her sister's passport. She didn't go to jail. I looked at all these different people, and I thought, okay, sound. So in America it's a bad problem. In Britain it's not. But obviously I got 10 months. That's my other conviction. 10 months in custody for that.
Tommy has had 2 contempt of court cases. The first one was outside Canterbury Town Court, where he was attempting to film 4 Muslim defendants, accused of raping a 16-year-old girl. As it happens, they all were sent to jail for that rape. Tommy was surprised that given the DNA of all the 4 men had been found on the girl, that they'd be bailed, and were running the same shop that they were running before where they raped the girl. The problem was that other girls were still going into that shop, and so Tommy objected to the bail and he wanted to expose it. He made the mistake of filming on the steps of the court, and to film on court property is against the law and is contempt. However, you will often see reporters reporting on the steps of a court, but with Tommy, it's against the law. But now, let's look at how months later he was arrested for this civil offence.
Obviously your camera's on, that's fine. You're arrested on suspicion of content of court on the 8th of the 5th, 2017 at Canterbury Court.
The content of what I'm streaming. I'm being arrested for breach of the peace.
him?
Being arrested for breach of the peace. You've all watched this. You've all watched this. You've all watched this. You've all watched this. Can you get me a solicitor? Can you get me a solicitor?
For you just turn up.
Yes.
Now turning to the second contempt of court arrest. This was outside Leeds Crown Court, and I'm going to take you through the arrest in chronological order. After him not understanding the law with regards to filming on court property, those steps, Tommy went on a course, a legal course, to understand what contempt is. This taught him, obviously, not to stand anywhere on court property, so he checked with the police locally, there on the spot, that he was not on court property, and secondly it taught him that he could only read out what was already in the public domain. So what he read out was from his phone, and that phone was on the BBC website. So he was reading out already public information. He was not breaching the law, but that did not matter for what followed. The judge spotted him out of the window, broadcasting on his telephone from public land. Not an offence. But he sent the police down to arrest him for a totally trumped-up charge of disturbing the peace. He was standing there by himself with his phone. He wasn't disturbing the peace, and of course they never followed up with that charge. It was just a fake charge to get him off the street. It turned out he was to be jailed within 5 hours of being arrested, and he was jailed for contempt of court. In that proceeding, he was not told what he had said that was wrong. He was not allowed his own lawyer. He was not allowed any mitigation to explain. He was not even asked whether he wanted to plead guilty or not guilty. It did not matter. He was going to go to jail within that 5 hours. He was also denied full access to his appeal lawyers. These are facts as listed by the Court of Appeal when they granted him a new trial. Tommy was jailed on a Friday, and there was a bank holiday Monday following that Friday, so the court convened again on the Tuesday when the defence lawyers of that grooming gang claimed that Tommy had prejudiced the trial. But the judge and the CPS had over the weekend actually seen what Tommy had transmitted and confirmed that there was no prejudicial statements issued by Tommy. Tommy Robinson did not prejudice the trial, but that judge still left him in jail. When the judge had Tommy's statement with all these facts in that retrial, he referred the matter up to the Attorney General. This, of course, only came out much later, after the Court of Appeal granted Tommy a retrial. Because the fact is that the state had totally mucked this up, and even today we await the response from the Attorney General, a response that may be quite difficult for them because the state had simply breached the law. He was clearly innocent. Yet all you heard from the mainstream media in this time was that he had pleaded guilty. Not true.
It was a sham kangaroo court to get him off the streets. That's our
After he
belief.
was released,
I must
Channel
admit.
4
What do you
News.
think this is all about? The contempt of court which he pleaded guilty to, or a freedom of speech issue?
Well, certainly it's a freedom of speech issue.
And of course there, Channel 4 was wrong and that gentleman was right. And then they failed to report in any way fully the Court of Appeal. They said he got off on a technicality. A technicality? And of course now, no response from the Attorney General. It's gone all quiet. A hot potato that demonstrated the total bias of the state towards Tommy Robinson and the total abuse of the judicial power exerted by the state on Tommy Robinson. So when there is injustice, how do the public who know about it react? There is a growing division between the ruling class, the media, and the people. And this division is based on injustice. But the injustice of Tommy Robinson's trial was not to finish there. What happened in prison to Tommy Robinson was nothing short of shameful. Wrongly, Tommy was imprisoned as a criminal, which he should not have been. He should have been imprisoned under a civil offence. And then, after 2 weeks in a safe prison, Tommy was moved to a prison which had the highest density Muslim population of any Class C prison in the country. This meant that the prison authorities had to imprison Tommy in solitary confinement, and there he stayed for 10 weeks, way past the limit that defines that process. as human torture. What follows is some exclusive footage of Tommy in jail. He is pacing around a yard that he's allowed to pace around for just 30 minutes in every 24 hours, often with other prisoners, Muslim prisoners, abusing him.
I was a little prisoner, 808 4CD, I was put 2 months. I lost 2.5 stones, put 2 months for solitary confinement, 33.5 hours a day in the cell. Now, some people would think I was angry about the situation. If I was angry, I'd be accepting my own victimhood. I may be their target, I'm no one's victim. And to be honest, the support I've received on the outside has kept me smiling the whole way through this. I come down here, this is all I get to do. I see no one. For what? I've committed no crime. It's insane. My little walk. Okay. And then sleep and repeat. But yeah, I want to say thank you. Cheers for doing this, Gulf, as well.
Because the Muslim cooks in the prison had intimated they were going to poison him, Tommy decided all he could do was eat a single tin of tuna a day, and that's all he could afford, because on the criminal system he was only allowed £12.50 a week instead of the £50 a week allowed for civil offences. On £50 a week he'd have been able to eat pretty well. On £12.50 a week he had a small tin of tuna and an apple a day. He lost 2.5 stone in 10 weeks. Placed on the ground floor near the mosque, his cell was exposed to the Muslim prisoners going to the mosque, and as a result, human excrement was being shoved through his barred window. He had no choice but to seal off the window in a very, very hot summer. And so, now to round up Tommy's criminal record, let's examine that football hooligan conviction.
Football. So, and this is the thing that frustrates me again. I hold my hands up. I have not been an angel. I don't claim to sit here polishing my halo. I don't. But as well as that, I'm now 36. I'm a father of 3. I'm not. You know yourself. Ask yourself watching this. Are you the man you was when you was 19 years old? Are you the man you was when you was 25 years old? I wouldn't change one single thing that's happened in my life, because I believe every single moment of it, even the worst moments, end up chiseling your character and creating who you are. And I sit here now and I react differently. I'm a different person. I had a conviction for swearing. Luton were playing Newport, and the headline is "Convicted Hooligan." Yeah? My conviction was for shouting, I'm sorry, I'm actually sitting in Wales now, but shouting "sheep, sheep, sheep shaggers." Yeah? Which is, I think it might have even been St George's Day. Luton were playing Newport. It's England versus Wales. It's a football stadium. That's what people do. But I was convicted and tried, and do you know what? I couldn't make any sense of it. When I got arrested, I thought, what's this? And they took me to court, and 2 police officers said, yes, I swore. So I was convicted of swearing, and then they gave me a 3-year ban. Now, the 3-year ban, this is when I understand what it's about. The 3-year ban wasn't just for football. I was given a map showing me where I could and couldn't go. I was banned from the entire Muslim community. So again, they used the football law in order to place a ban that would prohibit and limit my political activities at the time in my hometown. But yeah, that's the other one. So for all the people who say I'm a convicted football hooligan, yeah, I got convicted for shouting and swearing at a football stadium.
The pattern here by the state is one of persecution. The football incident for swearing in a football stadium, well, let's face it, if you actually arrested everyone for that, you would have empty football stadiums. But the terms imposed by that conviction were political, and this is where the state has become overpowering and misusing the laws to get their way in other areas. This overbearing attitude of the state simply has to be corrected in any democracy. But now let's start to examine in more detail the media bias. Here we go back to 2011, when Tommy was forewarning about the grooming gangs in a Paxman Newsnight interview.
The group's about 2 years old and the police aren't quite sure how to classify it.
That is because the police did not classify it as far right. It invited in all religions and all races, including Muslims.
They're vehemently anti-Islam, yet also have non-white and gay members.
That is right, because Tommy is not a racist.
So in a moment, I'll talk to their self-styled leader, Stephen Lennon, the man who goes by the pseudonym Tommy Robertson. Well, Stephen Lennon of the English Defence League is here now. English Defence League, what are you defending England from?
Sharia law, Islamism, the complete spread of militant Islam.
Note that Tommy said militant Islam. The interviewer Paxman will now try to get him to blame all Muslims. He will continually refuse to listen to what Tommy Robinson is saying.
Which we're seeing in our towns and cities across the country.
And yet you say you're not against Muslims.
No.
They could join your organisation, but you are against Islam.
We're against Islam taken in its 7th century barbaric form.
Paxman yet again trying to distort what Tommy says. Being against all Islam, Paxman is trying to get him to say, when Tommy is completely stating it quite clearly, it's against the extreme form of Islam.
Well,
Which
your
when it's
direct
taken,
quote is, I'm not against Muslims, just Islam.
Against militant Islam.
Now Paxman, the third attempt to distort what Tommy has just said.
And when I say Islam, taken in its 7th century barbaric form. If Islam was to evolve, which it needs to evolve, to fit in with Western democracy, which is clearly not. Clearly there's a problem. Clearly the English Defence League is a phenomenon that swept this country. And with the issues I'm talking about, Jeremy, if I ask you, do you know anyone that's hooked on heroin sold to them by Muslim gangs? You probably don't. I do. Do you know any beautiful girls that you went to school with that are now wearing a burqa that don't see their family? Probably don't. I do. Do you know anyone who's been murdered by a Muslim gang? You probably don't. I do. Do you know any 15-year-old girls that you know that you've grown up with that have been raped or pimped? You don't. So I don't expect you to understand the issues.
These are all personal issues of yours.
Now, quite bizarrely, Paxman is trying to make out that these rapes, these things going on, these crimes, are just personal issues of Tommy Robinson.
Personal issues in towns and cities like mine that are happening, and they're not happening with the Sikh community, they're not happening with the Jewish community.
And indeed, they're not happening with most Muslims.
No, they're happening within the Islamic community. This is what I'm saying, that it's an Islamic problem. And when I'm just a simple person, so I'm just a normal person, but when I'm looking at, I have to look for where this hatred's coming from.
So are you seriously suggesting there aren't white drug dealers and there aren't white gangs?
Of course I'm not, no.
Or Sikh gangs or any other kind of...
No, I'm not, but I'm saying some of these specific issues are coming from the Islamic community, solely the Islamic community. Terrorists wanting to blow us up, constant hostile activity towards our youth, all these problems, and from sitting back, there's got to be something it's coming from. None of the other communities are spreading it, so we're a symptom of the problem. The English Defence League are a symptom.
You're claiming that community is spreading it. Actually, what we're talking about
Members
here...
of the community.
Yes, exactly, as you could talk about members of the white community doing all sorts of atrocious things.
Yeah, but not 24-year-old groups of 10 of them hanging around outside school gates.
You've never seen a white gang?
And purposely targeting...
Never seen a white gang?
Are we going to pretend that Muslim groups are not out there purposely targeting our youth and pimping them?
Some 84% of these crimes are committed by men of Pakistani origin. And of course, there are other Muslim origin crimes being committed, resulting in some 90% of convictions being from Muslim men. But adult Muslim men only represent about 1% of the United Kingdom population.
Are we going to pretend it's not
You're
happening?
not pretending white people aren't doing that?
Then not in the same manner, not in the same group. They're saying it's a cultural thing which is going on within their community. And no one dare say it. I sat and watched Question Time, and when I watched Question Time, all I could see our political leaders was trying to explain that Jack Straw could have dressed it up a little bit better.
Experiences.
Yes, I mean, of course I recognise it, and although no one's mentioned it this morning, I mean, it's abuse of young girls, typically by men, has no ethnic boundaries, but this particular kind of gang abuse is particular. I'm sorry to say, but it's just true. It's particularly prevalent amongst the Pakistani heritage community. So it's not actually amongst the Indian heritage community. There's a bit of that, or the Bangladeshi one. It's something wrong inside the culture of some Pakistanis and their groups.
Whilst it's in the UK that Pakistani men are the predominant group in the grooming gangs, in other countries it's Afghans that are the predominant group, and in other countries Somalians that are the predominant group. The common denominator here is that they all come from the Islamic community.
Now, we've had examples of this in my former constituency, where I'm still heavily involved in local matters. Happily in Blackburn, because there had been very good coordination between the police and the social services, we didn't have any cover-ups of what was going on, and we were able to nip it in the bud. But in adjacent towns, including Rochdale, and across the Pennines in Rotherham, you've had these terrible examples where the social services and the police really covered their eyes at what was going on with disaster.
And talking about these girls like they're statistics. They're not statistics. These girls are... Well, whose daughters do you think these are? Whose sisters? They're ours, in working class towns and communities. And people are fed up of what's going on, and it is being ignored. For 20 years, our councillors and the leaders from the Islamic community have conspired with the police to not deal with Muslim pimping gangs. They've allowed systematic rape of our youth for the fact of being scared to be called a racist.
Although you know perfectly well that this happens in all communities with a tiny minority of people. Your broader point is to tar the whole of the Muslim community.
I'm not tarring the whole of the Muslim community, no.
Well, you keep saying that the Quran is an evil book.
I didn't say that, but I will agree with you on that, but I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that there is a root problem. We're all symptoms. All these things are symptoms. We need to... Don't waste your money. The government are going to waste their money doing an in-depth investigation into these Muslim paedophile gangs, yeah? Don't waste your money. Do an in-depth investigation into the Quran. All of this hatred has got to be coming from somewhere. Because every time we hear a philosopher or an expert on Islam who's a non-Muslim, they'll tell you.
Any Muslim who takes the Quran seriously is, in your view, an enemy of this society.
No, any Muslim that takes it in a 7th century barbaric form.
In that case, so you believe in some sort of revised Quran, do you?
I believe they need to revise it. I believe...
Who should do the revising?
97% of imams who are teaching in this country are from abroad. So that means these imams are teaching the same form of Islam that is taught in Saudi Arabia, the same thought that is taught in Pakistan. In Saudi Arabia, you can't have a Bible. Both of these countries are Sharia-driven hellholes without being rude. And
And for a second example of media bias, in this case total media distortion, we're going to look at Sky News. Just take a look at this headline from The Sun. This headline went all over the world. And where did it originate from? Well, it originated from Sky News with an interview with Tommy Robinson. And I want you to note 2 words in particular. The first word is he. And the second word is also he. So Tommy Robinson says that he doesn't care if he incites fear of Muslims as long as it prevents children from being raped. And that headline was run right throughout the world, as far as Australia and America, Europe, etc. But that headline is simply not true. What they did was ask a question in a voiceover and then take an answer from another question in the interview, and also had then to change 2 words. So let's see what Sky News broadcast.
Villain to some, but glorified outside court today. There's no doubt he's become a public figure, but I put it to him that as with terrorism, his opinions on grooming gangs risked demonising an entire community.
So there is the question. It's about his opinions demonising an entire community. Now please note when Tommy answers, he doesn't say he. The 2 he's don't appear in the sentence. What he says is it. And the reason for this we'll explain in a minute.
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. Yeah. I don't care if it incites fear, so long as it educates the children and prevents them being raped. Okay?
Do you really want to leave this interview with the thought that you're happy to instill fear of a community of 3.8 million people?
So here is the real question and answer. Tommy was talking about a video in Holland, put out to help train young girls how to avoid grooming. There was a problem in Holland with Muslims doing the grooming, just as there is in this country, and Tommy advocated that that training video should be shown to children on how to avoid being caught up in grooming. Only the UK government banned it.
Okay, there was a video called Loverboy that come out of Holland, which was showing that in Holland it's Moroccans, okay, doing these crimes. In Britain it's Pakistanis, we have majority Pakistanis. If you go to France it's Algerians. Common denominator in all of them, they're Muslims. Now, if you go to Holland, they actually created an educational video to be shown in schools to warn children about these crimes. When they tried to show that in Britain in 2007, the British establishment would not allow that video to be shown because, like you just go, oh, it will incite racial hatred. So because of people
well, it's going to incite fear to suggest that, when you also know that there are, like the group in Bristol, white paedophiles. There's the.
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. Yeah. I don't care if it incites fear, so long as it educates the children and prevents them being raped. Okay. Now that fear is a genuine, realistic fear that people should have. You know, every parent who lives near a Muslim community who has a young daughter, that fear's already in them.
So there we have it. Sky News took an answer to a different question than that on the voiceover. But that didn't make sense, so Sky News had to change 2 words. They had to change the it to a he. All Tommy was talking about was a training video to help children avoid being groomed. And unbelievably, the British government put the safety of their children lower than offending a community. Now let's continue with that interview to see what other points are made by Sky News and the complete biased way in which they operate.
In every single town and city in this country, young children are being taken as slaves by gangs of Muslim men. Now, if you don't want to draw the correlation to the fact that Islam promotes and allows that, then you don't want to because you're too weak and too much of a coward to do it. But I will do it. I will tell people we need to look at why this is happening and understand why it's happening.
I'm telling you that you're potentially inciting racial hatred. You've been out on the streets. You get. You know, over the course of your time as an EDL member, you were getting people out on the streets.
What race have I mentioned? What race have I mentioned?
You've mentioned Muslims, and you mentioned
Muslims aren't a race. You understand that?
We've talked about Pakistani men.
Islam is not a race.
Yeah, but we've talked about Pakistani men who believe in Israel, and this is semantics.
No.
Whether it's racism or Islamophobia.
You can't make an accusation like that. You can't make an accusation like that on TV and not back it up. Tell me what I've said that is inciting racial hatred.
You're suggesting that people of a certain origin are more likely to be rapists or child paedophiles or take slaves.
So let's now see what the current Home Secretary in 2018 says on the same subject.
I've already been clear that I will ask difficult questions about the gangs who sexually abuse our children. There will be no no-go areas of inquiry, and I will not let cultural or political sensitivities get in the way of understanding the problem and doing something about it. We know that in these recent high-profile cases where people have been convicted, that those people are disproportionately from a Pakistani background.
So that's actually factual by the grooming statistics and the rest. That's inciting racial hatred to you.
That you are suggesting that there is a group within society who are more likely to be paedophiles.
Which is exactly what the Home Secretary just did.
You might say the same about the Catholic Church, for example.
There is actually. If we look at people who run churches, then there is a higher percentage chance that the person running there's a higher percentage chance that the person running the Catholic Church is going to be a paedophile than the person running a Buddhist or a Sikh temple. That's a fact. Okay. Now another fact is that there is a higher percentage chance that it's Muslim men for street gang grooming. That's a fact.
You're equating it to the book that they read.
No, okay. When I sit on TV and I watch Boko Haram, who are a terrorist organisation in Nigeria, when they kidnapped 200 Nigerian women, we all saw the campaign Free Our Girls. Yeah? We saw every political leader holding it. What the leader of Boko Haram said on the camera is Muhammad has commanded us to do this. That's not me equating it. That's the leader telling us why he's took those girls. Now he clearly says, we've took those girls because Muhammad commanded us to. If you look at ISIS and all the sex slaves they've taken, they clearly state This is justified under Sharia. That's why we're doing this. Now, what I'm saying is, if we've got sex slaves being taken in every Islamic country in the world, and then we look at the statistics in Britain, and we see that the majority, 90% of these grooming convictions, brothers are sharing young children as victims, cousins, fathers and sons. Okay, there's something seriously different within this community that views how this is. There's no outroar. In fact, at each one of these court trials, all the women and all the families are calling the young girls slags.
Well, would you agree that throughout your life, you've been pretty well a rebel? Do you agree you've been a rebel?
Yeah, I'd agree with being a rebel. Do you know what? I'd also agree with the... So when people say, yeah, he used to be a thug, as I've said, you learn through life. And the way I'd react as a kid in things...
Well, it seems to me that rather than be a rebel without a cause, you've been a rebel with a cause.
Oh, mate, if that soldier's homecoming didn't happen, my life, I'd never have had another brush with the law. I never would have sat in a cell. I never would have faced the court cases and prosecutions that I've faced. And also, while we're on it, if I was such a thug, go online and look at all of the images and all of the videos. You'll find countless videos of me being physically and violently attacked. You'll see countless videos of people screaming abuse at me. I don't react violently towards them. I don't. Yeah, I've acted in self-defence at times, but it's clear self-defence. So I think if I was the thug that your all portrayal was, you'd have evidence. And it's like for 10 years I've walked with cameras everywhere, at demonstrations everywhere, and there's nothing. Anyway.
As an example of that, this is the left-wing anti-fascist movement, Antifa. They simply roam the country in masks, attacking people, even women.
And then the police come. And then when the police come, they've already said straight away that they're not taking any further because we don't know who they are. Because we don't know who they are. The police have made no attempt to find out who they are. Gangs of young men wearing balaclavas, acting violently, roaming up and down our country, deciding who's allowed to speak and who's not. And nothing's being done about this organisation. If this was a right-wing organisation, they'd be prescribed. They'd be prescribed as a terrorist organisation like National Action have been. I'm used to coming under violent attack, okay? But these groups claim to defend women and women's rights, but what you've just witnessed is them attacking a female, throwing her on the floor and violently attacking her. They have been exposed and showed themselves exactly for what they are.
Today, how would you describe your supporters? Because at that recent Brexit betrayal rally, there were over 5,000 peaceful supporters there, a family occasion.
Do you know what? This is what winds me up. Because I get so protective or so angry. I'm used to being called names. I'm used to being slandered. They ruined my ability to work certain jobs and live certain life. That was gone years ago. I've accepted that. But when I see people who support me and you're trying to do it to them and demonise and slander them, and how would I describe my supporters? The best of Britain. The best people. And you know what? It's completely changed. I used to talk at English Defence League rallies. I remember a lad come with me. And in fact, he was a journalist. And he didn't like me when we started when he first started working with me, he told me straight out, I don't like you. I don't like your politics. We've become very good friends over the years. He come and he said, I'm standing talking at a demonstration. This is what used to happen. Half the people would go to the pub. And half the others ain't listening anyway. Yeah? Many people were there for a day out. For completely the wrong reasons. For aggression. That has completely changed. When I watch now to the recent events we've had, we could have stood and spoke for 7 hours and not one person was going anywhere. There was no cans of beer. There was no, people know why they're there. They're listening to every word. They're educating themselves. So yeah, the support base is completely mainstream. And you know, which quite a moment of it. It's loads of mums and nans and that. I just keep getting hugged and kissed. It's beautiful and wonderful, and I feel so loved.
Then how do you feel when someone like Nigel Farage describes your supporters as beer-drinking tattooed thugs?
Tattooed to the eyeballs, eh? Do you know what Nigel showed in that? His own classism. He exposed himself to who he is and his view and contempt for the working class people. The majority of, get with the times, the majority of working class people have got tattoos. What does that define who you are? Because you've got a tattoo. I felt upset, angry. As I said, the first thing I do when I meet my supporters is I ask them where they've travelled from, just to get a gauge. And I remember when I was at the Old Bailey, Sunderland, Motherwell, I say, what time did you leave? Just because for me, it's an emotional thing to think that these people have, in times of difficulty, in the weeks before Christmas, when people are skint or they're poor, they've spent their time and their money to travel for 7 hours, 6 hours in the middle of the night to come and support me. I ask what they do, and I can honestly say that the support is it's so diverse now. And you've just seen it yourself at the Brexit rally. But then what the media portray is the complete opposite, which is just criminal.
Before the recent Brexit betrayal rally, you put an online video out pleading with your supporters not to be provoked by anything that may happen at the rally and never to react violently, just to ignore it. So these days, is it clear that you're always advising your supporters to always resist any sort of violence?
It's clear to say that I've always clearly done that, which the media will never show. So when Lee Rigby was beheaded, my first speech, 4 days later, to a crowd of 10,000 in Newcastle, I started my speech by saying there are 600 Muslims serving in our armed forces. They're doing a lot more for this country than I am. If you abuse a Muslim woman wearing a hijab, you are a coward. If you attack a mosque, you're an absolute moron. No one talks about this. At every opportunity, I know I've got a responsibility. I know people listen to me.
So are you telling me that if you are on the tube in London and you saw a woman, a lady in a hijab, being harassed by someone,
I'd be the first one to knock them out.
Well, maybe
excuse me, no, I probably would though, but I'd be the first one. I would not tolerate it. Do you know what? I disagree with the burqa. I'd hold the door open for a lady wearing one.
Yes.
So it's not, and I would never tolerate or watch. And do you know what? That facade, that image that's put about, there's a photo of lots of men with St George's masks over their faces from the English Defence League demonstration, and there's a woman sat on the train with them. I was on that train. She was fine. If one person, if you go to demonstrations, I remember going to one in London and a woman with a hijab was walking through. If one person would have disrespected her, and this is the image that's they'd have been put in line straight away by people, by any of the ordinary members and supporters. So that image of hate, the hate field, that's not at all how it is. It's not how it is. So, and again, do you know when I say that, and I'll give you another example, which is it's a funny example. I'm doing a St George's Day party where I live, and I'm doing a St George's Day party, and my friends have all come up, and we're sat there, and my friend's mum's there, and she's a black Kenyan Muslim woman with a hijab on, and her phone goes, and she says, "You're not going to believe where I am." And she's obviously talking to some Muslim friend. She goes, "I'm at Tommy Robinson's St George's Day party," and then we're all laughing our heads off. And that's my mate's mum. That's my best mate. And he joined the Navy. So there's two brothers. He casts himself as Muslim. The other brother doesn't. Yeah. Wonderful lads. Patriotic as you will ever get. Go to all the England football matches. So again, I wouldn't tolerate it. I say to them about Islam. I say to them, "Nah, bro, like we have the discussion." It's like, "Nah, mate, it's not." But not for him. He goes back to Kenya all the time. In fact, he's in Kenya now, my mate. But yeah, the image that's portrayed is not how it is, and that's not just for me. That's for you. Come to any one of our demonstrations, and anyone acted in any sort of way towards anyone like that, they'd be put in place.
Let's talk about the future. You seem to be becoming involved in many other issues, a sort of social justice warrior, really. Do you ever see yourself becoming a politician?
So whenever people used to say to me, I used to get, not offended, but I used to get defensive. I say, I'm not a politician, I never want to be a politician. Because I have such distrust for politicians. The establishment, I despise them. Even the most recent Brexit situation shows you why. The Labour Party would traditionally be the party that my family would always have voted for and would always have supported. 90% of their MPs are middle class. I feel that there's never been a party that represents me or even anyone I know politically. But making a lot of noise like we have on the street, getting angry, it's not going to change anything. The realisation that it's through politics, and the only solution to solve the problems we have is through politics.
Tommy, there is no doubt that as a person you're driven. What do you think is the best way to bring about change in the future?
So when I first started out activism, I was naive to think that we'd make a lot of noise and the political parties would all want to talk to us about the issues. And then the realisation that none of them would. And as the years have gone on, you can make as much noise as you want on the street. They do not care. They will only care when you start taking their seats. And there's no point being on the outside all the time. And you know, when I was invited after my acquittal at the Old Bailey to the House of Lords, and I watched the way Burko and another MP, all of them actually, the way they hissed and looked down upon us, I then thought, do you know what would really rock the boat here, which is what our politics needs, is if I was sat in there amongst them, telling them on behalf of all the people who have had enough, all the people who despise the establishment, all the people who are scared for their children's futures, the realisation that politics is the only answer. And a movement has built, not about Tommy Robinson, a movement about oppression, about free speech, a movement of people who know the direction this country is going in is not right, a movement of people who are scared for the future of their nation and their children's futures. A movement has grown, and that movement must be politicised. Must be. It's the only solution. That's where I'm at.
Gerard Batten, the leader of UKIP, has aligned himself with you. What would you say to your supporters about UKIP and Gerard Batten?
I'd say to my supporters that Gerard has, I wasn't sure of Gerard. In fact, I was sure. One of the first articles I read when I was looking into Islam, 2004, was a pamphlet made by Gerard Batten. One of the first political figure awakened to Islam, Gerard Batten. When I met Gerard and I discussed with him, Gerard's not a career politician. He worked 30 years of his life. He's worked the jobs that you work. He's just like you. He's a working class man. And you know what? Over the whole Brexit March issue, I questioned. I look at people when new movements or new groups spring up. Here be gone, here be gone. That will stop. Because I know the pressure they're going to face. And then I saw the way Gerard dealt with, 10, 20 resignations from MEPs, the pressure from Nigel Farage, the attacks, the smears. I've seen him handle himself under intense opposition by journalists. And I sat and thought, there's a leader, man. He's a leader. And he's got every single attribute of a leader. And I was really really, I was surprised, I'll be honest. I was surprised that he didn't resign. I was surprised that he didn't pander, that he didn't ring me up and say, oh, Tommy, look, I'm just going to have to do this. You're going to have to. So many people do this, have done this, invite me places, and then, oh, Tommy. He didn't do that once. He just stuck to his guns because he knows what he believes. And so all of the support of all of the people, if you want a people's party, a party for you, not a party with huge multi-billionaire donors or millionaire donors who then direct what path the party goes in, but you, then people have to support that party. Now, you're fighting against the Labour Party, the Conservative Party. They need help, they need support. To do that, they need funding. Now, for each one of you, I wish I could just pay £25 a year or £50 a year or £100 a year and sit back and watch as someone else takes the fight to them. That's all, and I fully understand many people who fear losing their jobs, who fear social outcasting, who fear all these things. People aren't really asking that much. What they're saying is, just join. Let us do the work. Let UKIP do the work. Let Gerard do the work. Let them be your voice. Then, yeah, I'll tell them all to join UKIP. I'll tell them to strike fear, just like the famous Quranic verse. Strike fear into the heart of the disbeliever. Strike fear into the heart of the establishment. Join UKIP in your thousands.
Anyone who reads your book, Enemy of the State, cannot wonder about the treatment you've had in prison. And in fact, since that book, your treatment in prison has been such that the evidence is that the state has conspired to kill you, as incredible as that may sound. What are your thoughts on this matter now?
I have no doubt at all that things have been purposely done to me. And I think there'll be a lot of people, or the people who have conspired, will be sitting there, scratching their head, watching this, saying, it hasn't worked. And every time you've tried to do something to stop it, to silence it, you've made it louder, you've made it bigger, you've made it grow. The more you do, and that's why I sit, and do you know what? I smile as I want to talk about it, because I smile because of the people power. If there was no movement, if there wasn't a Free Tommy movement, I wouldn't be here. I'm in no doubt of that. I was put in prison. I was taken to the most populated Muslim CCAT prison in this country. That was no mistake. If they thought they could have got rid of me, I think they would have done. But I think they looked around and saw your reaction, the public reaction, and realised, oh, this isn't going to be good. And I sat there then knowing that I always say, and I said it before I went to prison, and someone played it on a video, I watched it when I got out, saying, defining moments change the direction of a country throughout history. Whether it be Bloody Sunday with Northern Ireland, something's going to happen in this nation that changes its direction. Something big's going to happen. And to those people who are conspiring, if you conspire to have me killed or murdered, I just think that would be that moment. So I'd still get what I want, and I'd still be on the winning side. So crack on.
Tommy, in this documentary, you have been very open and exposed the good and the bad about yourself. Is there anything that you would like to say to those watching?
Just that I hope you understand that I care. But I genuinely care. Which I say is more than you can say about any of the politicians sitting in Westminster. And yeah, the good and the bad. I don't claim to be anyone or anything that I'm not. I was a young working class man trying to earn a living, and my life changed forever. And I wouldn't change one bit of it. And I think that if you sit there and you ask yourself this question, is our country changing for the better? Has it changed for the better? If you're a father, if you're an Englishman, if you're a Scottishman and Welshman, I sit there and say, can I say this country's going down the right direction? No, it's not. As a father, do I have a duty? Do every one of us have a duty to hand down a safe and prosperous Britain to the next generation? When you think about what previous generations gave and sacrificed, 14-year-old children pretended they were 16 so they can go and fight and die so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we have now, so that we can live in peace. Are you doing enough? Are any of us doing enough to protect the future of this country? Join the movement. Support the movement. Thank you for watching.
Very urgent business, ladies and gentlemen, I beseech you. Resist it while you still can, and before the right to complain is taken away from you, which will be the next thing.